You say you wanna stay by
Yeah,
my
of course.
side. Oh,
That's nice.
darling, your head's not right.
I see lonely staying together, we fall apart. Yeah, I think I'll be alright. I'm working so I won't have to try so hard. Tables they turn sometimes.
It seems that people in the lower class who suffer from the stress of poverty would have higher rates of depression than people in the upper class. Research has shown that this is not the case. Depression permeates throughout all socioeconomic classes. We want to find out why depression exists in the upper class and upper middle classes despite the economic advantages of the upper classes. Our hypothesis is that depression exists in the upper classes because of genetics and stressors not found in the lower classes.
What are some ways to prevent depression?
To prevent depression. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to prevent depression. I mean, it's a chemical imbalance that's going to happen regardless of what it is that any of the changes that you try to make. I mean, certainly there's medicine you can give somebody when that happens to recreate that chemical balance, and therefore they don't manifest any of the signs of depression. So I think that, you know, helping people to understand the importance of being resilient in life, and then helping them find those ways in which they are best at being resilient, which is different from person to person.
Coping levels.
Right, and then and just some people, like, you know, part of their thing is if they were to go out and run for, 4 miles, they'd come back and a lot of that stress would be removed from them. And other people, right, running 4 miles would just add to their stress.
Yeah.
They would actually use that as time to, realize, oh, I'm not running often enough. Anyway. So I think it varies once again from, person to person. So you have to find your style, sort of resiliency.
How much of depression would you say is genetic and how much is environmental?
Well, I think that you have, I don't really have a clear answer on that. I just know that if your family, you have a significantly higher rate of showing signs of depression later on or at any point in your life. Their life circumstances certainly push them, over the edge and into depression.
So going off the environmental factor, is there a cause of depression that's in the upper class but is not present in the middle or lower classes?
I don't know if I'd say that there isn't a cause. I think the cause is it's the same kind of cause. But it just shows itself in different ways. Like we reach a point where we just feel that we can't cope anymore. And some of that is, the reasons might be very different if you're from, you may feel, the pressure of losing your job, the pressure of losing your house, the pressure of your kids not being as successful as you want them to be, the pressure of your, like for a lot of students at Paramount, the pressure of not getting into the college that they thought, that they wanted to get into, the pressure of always being on in every aspect of your life is tremendous, right? The fact that you get so little time to diffuse and unwind is, I think, causes extra angst that sometimes can lead to depression. I think people who live in other areas that aren't as privileged as around here, I think they have the same kinds of things, just the stresses can be very different. Yeah.
Alright, so going to basically our main question is, why does depression exist in the upper class and upper middle class despite the advantages?
Because we're all cursed. No, I think that you have, genetically, it's still gonna be there. You can't, you're gonna have people, and I think that there's not really, there's just nothing you're going to be able to do to change that. And I think that people feel pressures all the time. I mean, I think we have a lot of advantages when it comes to care, for sure. Like we have, I mean, I think we're much better at recognizing it in people, and our kids see the doctor more often, where a doctor can ask the right questions. I think that one of the things that is, I mean, I think we live in denial about it as a disease, and that's probably one of the worst things we do. Like, I mean, when was the last time you went to your doctor and he or she asked you anything about your emotional state, your mental state, right? It's all about your physical state, right? And that part, I think, is really, I think you could actually help a lot if people who were asking the right questions early on, instead of, I mean, you don't even have to show a sign, but like that should be a routine thing that happens when we go to see a doctor, and it often is not something that people ask about. I think that because we are perceived to be of the privileged, it's a double failure if we're not successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really adds to that anxiety that people feel, and then it causes us to talk even less about it, for sure.
What factors could contribute to depression?
Well, see, Connor, there are many factors that contribute to depression. One of which is genetics, and genetics definitely is one of the factors that contributes to depression. While there hasn't been a specific gene isolated for depression, genetics still plays a key role in someone's depression. Also, significant changes in someone's life can trigger depression if they don't have good social support. Insomnia is another factor that can cause depression, the age of the individual, or if they have a low socioeconomic standing in the world.
Interesting. What are some ways to prevent depression?
Well, see, preventing depression is basically impossible. However, there are many ways to treat depression. A better diet, exercise, positive attitudes, stress management, and sleeping well are all ways you can treat depression.
How much of depression is genetic and how much is environmental?
Well, I think it definitely stems from both of those areas. For example, stress to succeed in the upper classes could lead to depression, but a genetic predisposition is just as likely to cause depression.
Why does depression exist in the upper class and upper middle class, despite the advantages of being in the upper class?
Well, see, like I said before, genetics is a major factor in causing depression. But also, coping or attributional styles play a role. For example, I may be a rich billionaire, but I blame all my issues on myself, thus causing a downward spiral towards depression.
Interesting.
After interviewing both Ms. Vesky and Ms. Boyko, we conclude that depression exists in the upper and upper middle classes because of genetics and the stress of being expected to succeed. Since those in the upper class can't escape their genes, they can't escape depression. There are stresses in every class that lead to depression. In the upper class, one of those stresses is being expected to succeed by doing well in school, going to a competitive college, getting a high-paying job, and having equally successful kids. We cannot prevent depression, but we can treat it a few ways, including eating a better diet, exercising more, keeping a positive attitude, using stress management, getting more sleep, talking with trusted people, and using antidepressants.